We get asked questions all the time at Olivia's house, from curiosity about the bereavement process to wondering who Olivia is. We pride ourselves in educating the community. So in that vein, we are so excited to announce our newest season of Weekly Wisdom. In the following weeks, Olivia's house will be opening up the floor to you, our community, to ask questions of the staff at Olivia's house. This time, we will be the wisdom givers. No question is too big or small. Like, what do the letters in Casey's name stand for? Let's see what questions we're answering this week. When a loved one dies, we go through a natural process called the bereavement process, which is our brain's way of protecting and guiding us through our healing journey. But we also go through the bereavement process when we experience life cycle losses. Life cycle losses are built around change. All death is loss, but not all loss is death. Think of divorce. That's a tragic life cycle loss with so many changes to your family structure and daily routine, even though nobody died. So what we're going through right now with social distancing, being socially isolated and not interacting with people, friends, and family on a regular basis, that's a life cycle loss too. It's not a death, but still a loss. So let's look at how the bereavement process relates to our current situation and how we can get through it. Leslie, start us off.
Thanks, Julia. The bereavement process is so complex, and yet it is a natural process built in all of us. So our brain basically says that it's going to protect us from whatever we are facing, whether that is a saber-toothed tiger in caveman days or whether that is the loss of our job due to COVID-19. And what happens with us is that we begin to feel a little bit like we are a walking zombie. I mean, you just can't get your thoughts together. Concentration is just difficult. You can walk into a room and you don't know why you went in the room. In the beginning of any kind of loss, whether it is a death or whether it is a life cycle loss, a loss without death, we face the bereavement process as we learn how to adjust to the changes. We have very physical symptoms. It can be a stomach ache or a headache. It can be a heaviness in our chest or a lump in our throat. We have a real difficulty concentrating. We have sleep disturbances sometimes. Maybe we want to sleep all the time. Sometimes we can't sleep at all. We have appetite disturbances. We can have, just ravenous, gain weight, which is a lot of us in the COVID situation are gaining weight. Because eating comforts us and we feel the need to comfort ourselves. Sometimes we're so upset that we can't eat and we have an upset stomach, we just have no appetite. Lack of joy is present because the fun things we used to do just aren't fun anymore. So I think that the most important thing we need to remember in the very beginning part of this process is this is very short-lived. It's not going to last long, but it is your body's way of saying, I am going through change, and it is your brain's way of saying, I'm going to protect you until we work through some of the feelings. And then you move on to the feelings. And the feelings are a very interesting part of this process. What can you tell us about those, Julia?
Thanks, Leslie. I want to talk about the next part of the bereavement process, which is feelings. During this portion, your brain has started to power back on, so you aren't feeling so sluggish and zombie-like anymore, but now the feelings come flooding in. When you're dealing with any type of loss, one of the hardest pieces to come to terms with can be the loss of expectations. Were you expecting your loved one to always be by your side physically or be present for momentous life occasions? These thoughts can bring on feelings of anger, frustration, guilt, and so many more. This is what we're experiencing right now in our life cycle loss of social isolation. Have you felt confused, annoyed, frustrated, mad, maybe even a case of FOMO? Processing these feelings are a part of the natural bereavement process, and if they're pushed down or ignored, they will only come out later in worse and more intense ways. Check out all of our previous videos on positive coping skills so you too can learn how to cope with all of these new feelings. Leslie, what's next?
Well, Julia, assimilation is a really interesting part of the bereavement process. I kind of parted ways with my colleagues early on when they used the word acceptance. I didn't believe acceptance was just the right word for this part of the process. We assimilate, we take our losses into who we are, and we try to find meaning to those losses. We try to figure out what happened and what does that mean to me now, and how does that affect me going forward. So for example, if during the COVID you lost your job and you're going to need to move to another town to get another job, the meaning, the assimilation of who you are now is important. You have to ask yourself, okay, without this job, who am I now? Not who am I, you know who you are, but who am I now without this job? So that is hard work, and what we need to do is slow down and really kind of face those tough questions, get quiet enough to try to answer them for ourselves, and look for the meaning in what it is that you want to do with your life and how you want this loss to define you. And I think that hope is an important word during the assimilation of a loss. We all want to have hope, and we want to find meaning that really revolves around hopefulness. So if you do have to find a new job, does that mean that's a new adventure? Maybe you're going to go back to school, or you're going to do something you always wanted to do because now you have a chance. So rather than looking at it like I'm going to be broke and I'm never going to get another job again, you look at it like, well, here's an adventure. I can do what I thought I would never get a chance to do. Or I'm going to get to move to a new city because there's not a job here for me anymore. So it's an interesting journey. It's a difficult journey. It takes some time, but it is one that is amazingly insightful, and it is necessary. And once we find that meaning and we figure out how can I take this into who I am, and how can I show the world tangibly what I have learned about myself, that is the part of the process we know as reconstruction. Julia, I find reconstruction to be fascinating and probably the most fun as part of the bereavement process. What can you tell us about reconstruction?
The final part of the bereavement process, reconstruction, or showing the world the tangible ways in which you have made meaning of your loss. Once you've spent ample time turning inward, facing your feelings, and assimilating the meaning of this new loss into your lives, you will naturally move into the reconstruction part of the process. This can't be rushed, though many people wish they could just jump right to this part of the process from the beginning. After a death, you must figure out how to move and interact in this world without your loved one there to help you, and this takes time. For decades, we have given bereaved individuals the phrase new normal as a way to adapt to their new life structure. Well, now we're all using this phrase, which is even more evidence that we are all bereaved from this collective life cycle loss. When someone loses their spouse, they sometimes have to learn how to cook, pay the bills, mow the grass, find their new normal. This is our challenge as well. And we've begun to meet it by moving to online schooling, working remotely. Olivia's house has adapted by moving our Hearts Can Heal group into a virtual space. And I personally have added a new meditation to my morning ritual. We hope this helps to normalize what we are all experiencing. And as always, Olivia's house is here to help you with whatever losses are happening in your world. Oh, and be sure to ask a question in the comments on this week's video, and we could choose your answer for next week's question. We'll see you then.